'cause nothing's gonna kill New York City. Real New Yorkers know what I mean.
Favorite weekend getaway from New York?
I like to go to an island where there are no lines and it's very quiet on the weekends and there's lots of stuff to do, amazing restaurants. It's this amazing island.
What's it called?
Manhattan.
Oh, I love it. One word to describe New York.
Forever. New York forever. And we'll sing it together. New York forever. New York forever. New York forever.
Gossipnista here, your one and only source into the real lives of New Yorkers and what it's like to live in New York City. So is it all glitz and glamour? Where do you start? What should you know? And who am I? I'll tell you everything you need to know, and you'll thank me for it. XOXO Gossipnista. Welcome to the Gossipnista podcast. Hey everyone, I'm your host, Mariana Monks. I truly appreciate you tuning in and thank you so much for your continued support on this podcast. On today's interview, I have a staple of New York City on the show, Dan Smith. And the song that you just heard, which is called New York Forever, was written, produced, and sang by him. It's probably going to be a tune that you'll be singing the chorus to all day in your head or maybe out loud as I have, as it's literally so catchy and it's more relevant than ever to the times, and a song that I truly believe will live on forever as an anthem to New York City. I am beyond honored and excited to have come across Dan Smith through his artistry and music for our interview, but you know what? Little did I know that Dan had already built a cultural phenomenon in the city with his guitar. You'll have to tune in to the whole interview to hear that story, plus learn more about his inspiration for the New York Forever song, the future of his music and career, as well as hear firsthand tips on how to make it as a musician in the city, plus so much more. Please support Dan and his music and help me bring this song to a wider audience by sharing this episode and getting the New York Forever song heard by all of those who love NYC. It's a must listen to song and interview with Dan Smith. So without further ado, here is my interview about the New York Forever song by Dan Smith. Hey Dan, welcome to the podcast. I am beyond excited to have you as a guest on the show. I am looking forward to your story. Welcome. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. It's a beautiful spring day in New York City. So I'm very excited to talk to you and talk about New York forever.
Yes, we are definitely going to dive into that. All things New York City, but I like to start off with a hard-hitting question, joking here. And
Okay.
the first one is, are you originally from New York City, Dan? Are you a native to the city?
I am not. I actually grew up in Newton, Massachusetts until I was about 18. I came here to go to NYU to study acting. That was back in a long time ago.
Uh-huh.
And so then, but I've been here pretty much ever since. I spent 1 year in Paris, and that was my last year at NYU. And then I came back here, and the city and I have been locked on to each other ever since.
Oh, wow. Okay. So great. Thank you for giving us that context of where you've been. And so literally straight after high school, came over to New York City. You've been here ever since.
Pretty much.
You had a stint in Paris throughout that time. And
That's
then how long in Paris? You said a year?
I was there for just under a year.
Okay.
Which was a great experience, but I always love coming back to New York.
Of course. And that's what a lot of people say after they go and see other places in this world. And so, what neighborhood did you essentially first land upon when moving to New York City? And then where are you now?
Sure.
If it's changed or not.
Oh, it's changed quite a bit. I've lived all throughout the city, but the first area that I lived in was right at NYU. I was just above Washington Square Park, And then from there, a little bit up towards Union Square Park. And then when I came back from Paris, I lived on the Lower East Side for a little while. And then I moved to the Upper West Side. And that's definitely been my kind of headquarters for a long time. And the Upper West Side I kind of moved there by accident in many ways. I just found what was at the time a very inexpensive place.
Yeah.
And I found it, believe it or not, in the Village Voice, which is not something, I think it actually does still exist, but this is in a pre-internet world. So that I was, very happy to find that I moved to this wonderful neighborhood. So, but I've also lived in Midtown, and I've lived all over.
Oh, wow. Okay. So it sounds to me that you started in those pretty lively areas down by
Oh yeah,
NYU,
yeah,
really in the midst of everything city-wise, and
sure, yeah,
kind
yeah,
of did a lot of downtown, but now you've
hmm
been in the uptown,
yeah.
area for a long time. And
It's
how are you
true.
liking the Upper West Side, assuming you love it as well?
Oh yeah, oh yeah. I love the Upper West Side. It feels kind of like it has an old world feel to it. I don't think it's an accident that the Marvelous Mrs. Maisel tends to shoot around
Hmm.
here.
Hmm.
But it also has all kinds of wonderful up and coming areas and restaurants, and especially with the reopening, I think it's going to be a really magical time.
Yes, everything in New York is magical. So
Yes,
thank you
yes, it is.
for sharing that. And so
Sure.
overall, what would you say your experience in New York City has been like?
I think it's been a tremendous period of growth
Mm,
and continues to be that. That's kind of, I would say, New York for me has always been a teacher,
mm,
and an opportunity to dig deep in yourself and find something, find your imagination, find your drive, and but also it does require a certain kind of ability to, you have to develop skills that will ground you
mm.
in order to live in New York City. And some of those skills are just, you got to keep your sense of humor
Yeah, I
about
like
things.
that. Yes.
That's one skill
Mhm.
that's important to have. But also just learning how to, relax on an ongoing basis. I think New York City has this kind of, people from New York City are kind of stereotypically thought of as very high strung, and obviously
Mhm.
there's some truth to that. But to me, I think it's actually an opportunity to learn how to, it's a challenge in a way.
Yeah,
To how do you stay centered? How do you stay relaxed? Whether
yeah.
you learn to meditate or you learn to whatever, just learn how to, find space in your life where you find some sense of stillness.
Mhm.
Because obviously the city can be virtually anything but still. Not that
Exactly.
there aren't places and moments for that, but it's obviously, it's a living, breathing thing,
Mhm.
and it's because everybody who comes here is here because they want something, and so that just creates this kind of dynamic where everybody's on their way to the thing they want.
Uh-huh.
So that is what has always attracted me about it, and there's just also just this tremendously, as you used the word magical earlier, this tremendously magical, romantic quality to the whole city. It feels like whenever I walk down the street in New York City, I feel like I'm in a movie.
Oh, yes. Just like those quotes, I feel that everyone,
Yeah,
kind of notes it's 100% what
yeah,
people are saying. Agreed with you. And I really like that you noted finding that balance and grounding
hmm
yourself within New York
yeah,
City is kind of something vital, particularly when you've been here as long as you have. You've been here for
yeah,
a good amount of time, and,
yeah, yeah.
it could get insane, I'm sure. And I'm curious, while you kind of noted on that, when you came to New York and you came at such a
Mm-hmm.
young age, and I think a lot of
Yeah.
people do, or they come in various times, but were you kind of culture shock by what you were absorbing, the city, the pace of it, the people?
I don't know if I would describe it as culture shock. I mean, I grew up in, kind of a middle class suburb of Boston.
Mhm, mhm.
And so I had, experienced a little bit of city life, going into Boston and Harvard Square and that kind of
Yeah,
thing.
yeah.
But I was just so excited to be here. I just felt like I belonged. I remember actually visiting NYU with my mom,
Uh-huh.
and we were walking along Washington Square Park on our way to a tour of the school or something, And she looked at me and she said, "You belong here, don't you?" I said, "Yep."
Oh my gosh, that gave me
So
goosebumps.
yeah,
When your mother says you belong here.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
amazing. I
yeah.
love that. And so, getting more specific here, Dan, I'd love to kind of just hear what are some things you like and dislike about New York City?
Well, I think what I like and what I love is the size of it. I love the not just the physical size of it, but the kind of the cultural size of it. You know, that when something happens here, it's on a world stage.
Mhm.
And also the sense of choices. If there's something in the world, you'll find at least three kinds of it here. And then obviously there is just the physical size of it. When I walk down the street, it's just kind of I find it. Some people find it very intimidating, and I can understand that, but I actually find it comforting.
Mhm.
um, I feel like I'm in the center of it all.
Mhm. Mhm.
So that's what if I could put it into a statement, that would be my best attempt at what I like.
Mhm. Mhm.
What I don't like are things like I think the city, especially since COVID, has kind of lost a lot of its sense of civility. And one example that always stands out to me is it was happening a little bit before, but it's definitely become almost an epidemic kind of situation where people ride their bikes on the sidewalk
Mm.
and or scooters or whatever. And so I really hope that the new administration will, if anybody out there is listening,
Mhm.
will do something about that because it's obviously it's dangerous
Of
and
course.
it's against the law. It's also just rude. So I don't like that.
Mhm, mhm. Definitely. And thank you
Yeah,
for pointing those specifics out. Agreed with
sure.
you there. That should be
Yeah,
kept for the pedestrians. And that's why
I
there's
think
amazing
so.
bike lanes here in New York
That's right.
City.
I'm
So,
a huge fan of City Bike, by the
mhm,
way. That's another thing I like. And you know, I know my bike lanes.
mhm, mhm,
I know them well. So yeah, I really believe that it's totally possible to change that too, because it wasn't always that way. It's kind of become, unfortunately, the way of the world now. But I hope it can change, you
100%.
know.
Agreed
Yeah.
with you on there. And you kind of dove into something that was, my next question. And it's given all that has happened in 2020
Mm-hmm.
here in New York City, and you seen New York throughout the years, really,
Yes.
it's
Yeah.
ups and it's downs. Like, how would you compare this COVID-19 impact to it to other things that's happened throughout the years?
I have to say that it's probably the biggest thing that I've ever observed in New
Mm.
York City in terms of its societal impact. I don't think I'm alone in making that assessment. It's, obviously it's international too, which goes back to my earlier point. If something happens here in New York, and we in many ways were, the term ground zero
Mhm.
in
Mhm.
my mind came from something that happened here in New York. I'm sure it was probably used before 9/11, obviously, but we in many ways were ground zero
Mhm.
because of I think also because of obviously the international nature of the city. So many other people from other countries enter the United States through New York,
Yep.
so that was a factor. But I would say COVID just it's like it's a giant lens that is being held up to life,
Mm.
and we're looking at ourselves, whether it's from a political standpoint or a social aspect or just our own personal journey. It's forcing everybody to look at themselves, which is, I think, in many ways a good thing, despite all the terrible things that have happened and that we will, rise up from. But I think there are a lot of opportunities that are presenting themselves and have been presenting themselves with this change as truly, excruciatingly difficult as it has been.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, no, agreed with you. And so with that being said, do you believe the city is going to return 100% to how it used to be, or will a new, type of New York evolve? Like, I'm curious to hear your perspective on that.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think the answer is both.
Mhm.
I think that in many ways it will come back to where it used to be, and it's already begun to do so. But I think that we have to go someplace new in order to move forward. And New York, I think, in many ways would do that anyway. And I think it, regardless of whether COVID happened or not. But COVID, in many ways, I think I go back to my earlier point. It's an opportunity. There was so much in the city that was kind of like, there's so many things that were just so expensive
Mm-hmm.
and disproportionately to, a sense of reality.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that what we have in front of us is just this great opportunity to bring so much more fresh blood into the city.
Mm-hmm.
Rents are a little lower, so it's an opportunity for, maybe younger people who don't have necessarily as much money as the super rich people to come into the city and start something fresh for themselves. There's opportunities, I'm sure, for, more mom and pop businesses to come into, which that's always been something I've been acutely aware of, especially with, everything I've done and explored in the city. That's been a big part of my experience in the city is mom and pop businesses. And I with all the kind of empty storefronts that are around now, I would think I'm sure there are all kinds of opportunities for new businesses to start.
Yes, yes, and I like that. I like
Yeah,
how you noted, it's going to come back to an extension of what it was, but it's also going to add new elements and new things and new opportunities to
absolutely.
it. So
Absolutely. Yeah.
that is very exciting to kind
Yeah.
of, be here, be living through it, and so my question to you is, any plans to ever move away from New York City? I mean, what has ultimately kept you here in the city? I'm curious.
I have no immediate plans to move out of New York City ever. The
Hmm.
only reason I would is if a creative project took me out of the city to, possibly to LA or something like that. But right now,
Hmm.
everything I have planned for the future is really very much rooted here in New York City. And
Okay.
so, yeah, no, I'm here.
Awesome. I'm happy to hear
Yeah.
that. I think everyone's happy to hear
Yeah,
that. So
absolutely.
amazing. And then, so, I'm going to go into this bit of a controversial question, but
Okay, please.
I am curious, would you consider yourself a New Yorker, Dan? And ultimately, what do you think it truly means to be a New Yorker?
Mm, okay. The answer is yes to your first question. Yeah, I feel like I'm a New Yorker. I felt like I was a New Yorker before I came here.
Mm,
But, and obviously you get indoctrinated just from just the passage of time, just from the mileage that you put in on the streets.
mm,
But I really I just kind of felt it in my bones before I got here. With every movie that I watched, I was rewatching a movie the other day called Moscow on the Hudson, which is a fantastic New York movie. It's an early Robin Williams movie, and I remember watching that when I was like 14 or 15, and that's just a great New York movie. I knew then,
okay.
I knew before then, but actually, the first movie I watched that really kind of got me with New York was actually Hair.
Hair.
The Yeah, with Beverly D'Angelo and Treat Williams. It's a great New York movie.
Mm.
Um, and I'm not really even a musical kind of person, but that movie kind of sucked me in.
Oh,
But
wow.
but anyway, so yes, I am a New Yorker. And what does it mean to be a New Yorker? I think it means that you define yourself by who you want to be and what you want to do, as opposed to what somebody else wants you to do or what you think you're supposed to do. I think New York, for me, requires imagination. It requires it because there's obviously a lot of competition here. There's a lot of
Mhm.
very high standards. Our New York requires them, whether it's a restaurant or your work as a musician or your work in whatever field you're in. I would say if I had to put it on two words, I would say it's imagination and
Mm.
motivation.
That is well said. I agree with you there, Dan. So thank you for sharing that perspective. And so, given
Sure.
that this podcast is revolved around, continuing to enrich the lives of New Yorkers here, but also those looking to move into the city,
Yes.
my question here is, what advice would you give to someone who is new to the city and looking to make a move here?
Well, I would say ask yourself, what is it that you can offer people? Whether it's just for starters, maybe it's just your willingness to work hard. Your willingness to bring a sense of commitment to it. Now, in some area, that's only going to get you so far. So I go back to my earlier point about imagination. You have to imagine,
Yep.
yourself. You have to imagine something. I know for me, I had to imagine something that really hadn't quite existed before. And then the great thing about New York is that it's a very encouraging city if you have something to bring, and I think because everybody else is trying to do the same thing. I know I've only felt encouraged by people when I try to do the things that I've, been building over the years. So I would say you have to kind of think outside the box and sure, there's what everybody else did and or what they are doing. But there's also, if you look at the great New York stories, that to me is always a theme. If you think about somebody like Andy Warhol, he came here and there had never been an Andy Warhol before. He created his own world. So
Yeah.
that's what New York offers the opportunity to do.
Create your own world. I love it.
Yeah.
Yes, agreed with you. And so, more so for native New Yorkers or just New Yorkers, what advice would you give to them currently?
I would say a lot of the same thing that I just said, use your imagination. But really, I think try to, be optimistic and see this for the opportunity that it is. I've heard a lot of talk about how we're going back to the 80s and the dark times of the 70s and whatever. And first of all, it really, if you take a step back and look at it, it's not really true. First of all, in the 70s and 80s, Broadway and sports and all these different financial engines were already going, and it was a difficult time then. We don't have those engines back yet, so when those start cranking back up again, it's going to be a very different feel to the city. It's already begun, but I think that's a really important point. People, it's very tempting. It's very easy to be pessimistic and to take a narrow view of the situation. But I think we need to think big here, and also just in practical terms, like I said, there's so many things that are coming back. They absolutely are coming back, and that's going to be a really celebratory moment to appreciate things that we've taken for granted.
Yep. Thank you
So
for
those are my thoughts as best I can
Yes.
sum it
No,
up.
and perfectly said. So thank you, Dan, there.
Sure.
And I have enjoyed so much learning about, where you came from, where you've been, your perspective within New York City, your story. I do want to sum it up here on this segment, asking if you were essentially asked, what New York is, represents to you, or kind of makes you feel, how would you sum that up either into a quote that you might make up or one that kind of sits out in the universe?
I think New York excites me, and it makes me feel like I can do anything. And I know I'm not the first person to say that, but I think that it's just a city of possibilities. It's a magical city of dreams.
Lovely. That actually transitions greatly into our second segment here, Dan. So again,
Sure.
thank you for sharing your story. Now, Gossipista here. I hope you're enjoying the show so far. I wanted to hop in here to ask that if you haven't yet, if you could please subscribe, rate, and review this podcast wherever you listen. This will help me reach more people and spread the word about New York City and those who love it. And if you want to stay up to date, be sure to follow @Gossipista Podcast on Instagram. Now, back to the show. Thank you for sharing your story. Now, moving on to our segment where, I'm excited to share and learn more about your background
Yes.
as well as your career
Yes.
as a musician. And kind of just to note here, for those that don't know Dan, let me tell you that he's a staple of New York City, and many native New Yorkers would identify him as a fixture of the NYC community. Your background is pretty amazing. And so let's dive into it here,
Sure.
Dan, starting with, tell us about your background. Have you always wanted to be a musician? And if not, what inspired you to go into music and nevertheless end up here in the city? I know that's a lot of questions in one.
Oh, that's all right. I can, we'll cover as much as we can. So I think I've always really thought of myself as an artist
Mm.
more than a musician or a writer or an actor or a teacher even. But certainly, what a lot of people know me for is my teaching,
Mhm.
and specifically, I teach guitar.
Mhm.
And what a lot of people know me for is this flyer campaign that I've put together over the years that's become kind of its own thing,
Yeah.
to put it mildly.
Yeah.
Because I think probably, oh geez, around 2003, I started to put my picture on the flyer. And, like anything I do, I do it pretty intensely. And so, and pretty, I'm pretty relentless about it. So I put a lot of flyers with that say Dan Smith will teach you guitar.
Mhm.
Um, all over the city with my picture on them. And there have been many versions of them over the years. If
Mhm.
you go to my Instagram account, you can see a whole retrospective of it.
Uh-huh.
But that was something that I did because I wanted to be in business for myself. I wanted to do something creative. I wanted to do something that I thought would be a platform for me
Yeah.
and be a way for me to grow and as a musician, but also as a business person, as a man.
Right.
Because I started when I was pretty young. I mean, I first started teaching way back when in Newton, Massachusetts, when I was like 16, and I would teach on and off through school. And then once I got back from Paris, I decided I was going to make it my goal to teach full time, which took a couple of years, but I did, and I've been doing that pretty steadily ever
Okay.
since, and it's been quite the journey. And so there's my teaching and everything that I've learned with that. But the thing that people get sort of all excited about is the flyer campaign, and there's been all kinds of it's if you don't know about it, it sounds a little weird, but what has happened is it's become this kind of meme, and so various celebrities have done kind of parodies of the
Yes.
flyer, and it's appeared in a lot of television shows. People have dressed up as me for Halloween.
Can you show me some
That's
photos of that?
Oh, sure. Yeah, that's been a whole thing. It's appeared in all kinds of different cultural,
Uh-huh.
permutations. There was a book. I remember walking into Barnes and Noble at one point, just looking around for a book to buy for a friend, and novelty books or whatever.
Yes.
And there was a book about like it was something about like I think it was called I Lego New York,
Uh-huh.
and so it was all these little Lego sculptures, kind of different things in New York City, like gum on the street but done in Legos,
Uh-huh.
and I was just thumbing through and going, oh, this is kind of a cute book, and there was one that was portraying my flyer in Legos.
No way.
Yeah,
Oh my
so like
gosh.
just all kinds. I mean, I could go on and on. There's all kinds of things like this. There have been all kinds of songs. People have written songs about it. If you go to my website, you can go to the press page and see there's all kinds of music videos, full music videos that people have produced, but also just songs. I
Right.
I
Oh my
think there's
gosh.
like I think there's like 10 or 12 songs on there. So I think one of the things that I've heard is that people have said that when they're not in New York, they will test people who they meet who they say are from New York. They'll kind of test whether they're a real New Yorker or not by asking them if they know who I am.
Oh, that is funny.
So, so it's it's really pretty crazy. And one of the things about it, and it's one of the reasons why I was very excited to come on your podcast today, is that in some ways it's almost become a distraction to my teaching and my music and myself as an artist.
Mhm.
And so part of why I was so touched that you asked me to be on your podcast is because you found me just purely through my music
Yep.
and the song New York Forever, which obviously we'll talk about more. But
Mhm.
so I'm in no way, I love and am very proud of everything that I've built with Dan Smith will teach you guitar and with my teaching. And it's been a great and continues to be a great experience. But that's been a little bit of a dilemma within that is, people focusing more on the flyers than what the flyers are for.
Exactly.
Yeah.
of the essence of what
Yeah.
represents Stan Smith. And again,
Yes.
that is, an artist, a musician, a
Hmm.
singer, a
Yeah.
songwriter, and so much more, right? So
Yes. Yes.
you just shared a lot of great insight there, Dan. Thank you
Sure.
so much. Just to kind of peel back a little bit of those
Yeah.
layers,
Sure.
and for people
Please.
to kind of, should they not know Dan Smith because, they're not from New York
Hmm.
City, and
Hmm.
natives and things along those lines. So, you came to the city for NYU for schooling, you
Hmm.
went into acting, but you had been playing the guitar since what age would you say?
13.
13.
Yeah.
And so then teaching at 16 and ever after, right? So when you say
Yeah.
teaching, you've been teaching guitar. And
Yeah.
so somewhere along the line, when moving into New York City, you decided to
Hmm.
create these promotional flyer campaigns that, say, Dan Smith will teach you guitar with a
Hmm.
photo of yourself on it. And these flyers blew up, and became a culture phenomenon here in the city with people like Mike Myers, John Mayer, the Jon
Hmm.
Stewart, and
Hmm.
amongst many others doing some
Yeah.
parodies on this. So,
Yeah.
and so that was a huge, part of who you are, and
Hmm.
people have identified you with, but it's not who you are, period. And there's
Right.
so much more than that. And so, as I mentioned, you're a singer, a songwriter, and you
Hmm.
wrote one of the most amazing, poetic, and timely songs about New York City, and called New York Forever.
Yeah. Thank you very
Of
much.
course. And that's why we're here to talk about that. That's how I
Sure.
found you. This is,
Hmm.
what's resonating with me, and I feel is going to resonate with a whole lot of people, and just moving
Hmm.
forward. So, I'm curious, what led you to create the New York Forever song?
Well, I, like everybody else, was, very much affected by the whole shutdown from COVID. But at the same time, I was, a little, I guess, disappointed and even angry to hear people talk about how New York is quote unquote dead, or,
Mm.
and with the whole dynamic of people moving out of New York. So that kind of, you know, pissed me off a little bit,
Yeah.
quite frankly. And I didn't like that, but I didn't want to land on a negative note about it. I wanted to point things in a positive direction. So I knew I wanted to, and I'd been hearing all these kind of phrases tossed around, like New York strong and New York this. And I thought it just kind of came to me that I wanted it to be something bigger than the usual adjectives.
Mm.
Because to me, New York was or is and always will be something bigger than even the people or the place or a particular generation even. It's forever. And that has always been, I think, a very powerful idea applied to other things. And I think New York it's a good fit for that. So New York Forever was just an idea that I started with. And I don't normally write that way. I don't normally, write to a title,
Mm.
as they say. But I started with that, and I knew I wanted it to be a simple song, a few chords, and I wanted it to feel like an anthem. So I listened to some anthems. I listened to Queen. I listened to different. I listened also to the song by Four Non Blondes, which is a song called "What's Up," which is a big anthem from the '90s.
Mhm.
But I tried to find my own way to do it, and I wanted it to be something positive that in which I could kind of tell my story, but also make it a story for everybody
Yeah.
that anybody could relate to. And I also have always liked the idea of New York as a person that you have a relationship with. So if you listen to the lyrics, you can watch the lyric video on my YouTube channel if you want to. Shameless plug.
No,
Um,
please do.
but but if you listen to the lyrics, I talk about New York as has always been my girlfriend,
Yeah.
and I like that idea. It makes me feel, I find a sense of comfort with that, and because New York really has been a teacher
Mhm.
to me,
Mhm.
and I think it can be for everybody. Whether people want to learn the lessons or not is another question. But it's been, the city itself. I've always, no matter what has been going on for me, I always know I'm in New York,
Yeah.
and that is a good thing, you know. And so I wanted it to be something that would have a sense of, a story
Mhm.
to it, and positivity.
Yep.
and also a little, I mean, obviously New York is known for having a little bit of a hard edge, so I wanted it to have a sense of like,
This is New
uh,
York.
yeah, back up a little bit because this is New York.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, so, but also I wanted to be something obviously uplifting
Of
and
course.
something that everybody could sing a chorus for pretty easily. So that seemed it. I tried to check all those boxes as best I could.
Well, it sounds like you put a lot of thought and care and love into this song, right, Dan?
I
And
did. Yeah, that's true.
absolutely resonates with me. And I'm positive New York Forever will resonate with so many
Oh, that's
others.
great.
Yes. And
I
so
hope
of
so.
course, and I actually I don't know if this is gonna work here, but let's listen to a little bit of the beginning
Okay.
of New York Forever,
Sure.
and then I have some questions for you here for people
Sure. Sounds
people can
good.
listen to it a
Sounds
little
good.
bit. Here we go.
Many years ago, I came to this city with a pocket full of dreams. And I learned to get tough when things got gritty. But harder times we've never seen. We got shut down for God knows how long. Some say it may never be the same. And everybody's hurting deep down inside. But there's a lesson in the pain. We're gonna build it back better, 'cause we're in this together. New York forever. New York forever.
Oh my, it
Yes.
just, as soon as you turn on this song, you're just
Yes.
like so entrenched in it.
Oh, good. I'm glad you feel that way.
It's yeah, it's lyrics, it's
Uh-huh.
tune, everything about it, and really it just speaks to me. It
Oh,
speaks,
that's great.
New York to me, and really happy that you wrote the song, and the
Sure.
lyrics that you wrote about it are very true to this period in time, right?
Yeah.
Through COVID, and then even just moving forward. And you learn to get gritty when you learn
Mm-hmm.
to get tough when things got
Yeah.
gritty. You note
Exactly.
that
Yeah.
in here. We're going to build it back better, because
Mm-hmm.
New York
Exactly.
is forever. I
That's
mean,
right.
that is New York. And then you start diving into other things, and everyone, you can listen to the full song. Where can they listen to the full song here, Dan?
Good question. Well, you can find it on all platforms. It's on Spotify. You can get to my Spotify page by going to my website, and which is dansmithguitar.com.
Mhm.
And you can just follow all my social media links there. There's, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. You can watch the music video on, I think, pretty much all my platforms, but definitely on the YouTube channel, and the Instagram channel, or my Instagram profile. But it's on Apple Music. It's on, it can be streamed and or downloaded pretty much anywhere. Amazon Music, Google Play, all of those. So yeah, I mean, it was absolutely a labor of love for me, and the song, it's gonna sound cliche, but it's true. I just kind of had to write it,
Mm.
whether it was a successful venture or not. I loved writing it. I loved playing it. I loved listening to it. I enjoyed making the music video. That was kind of just an experience unto itself, because basically I shot it by just riding around the city on a city bike and shooting, just with my iPhone, different parts of the city
Right.
that were at different stages of the shutdown at the time. Because there's no shortage of signs of the shutdown and or the reopening. So like there are statues that people put masks on. There's stores that had been boarded up, but they had very prominent signs on there that said "We're open." So that to me represented so much about the state of the city at the time, that we were dealing with this very, very difficult set of circumstances, to put it mildly. And that's just from a business perspective. Forget about a human perspective. But nothing was going to stop people. Those signs, those weird
Yeah.
open signs, were so symbolic to me,
Yeah.
and then there was also this sense of trying to do the right thing. So to me, that's what the masks that got put on, like the lions. They had these giant masks they put on the lions in front of the New York Public Library, and that's in the
Mm-hmm.
music video too.
Mm-hmm.
As soon as I saw that, I was like, oh my god, I got to put that in the video.
Yeah.
But that to me, that was a message to the public at large that A, we're in this together, and B, we got to try to do this right. We got to
Mm-hmm.
try to take care of ourselves and take care of each other so that we can come out on the other side of this
Mm-hmm.
and and build back better. You know,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
so that's kind of I mean, it's hard for me to talk about this and not just launch into song because it's all the lyrics of the song.
Oh,
You
please
know,
do give us a rendition here,
sure.
but no,
But
not,
you know what I mean? So
yeah.
it's kind of if the questions you were asking me before too about my perspective on the city and everything. If you just listen to the lyrics of that song, that goes a long way. You asked me to sum up the city in one word, it probably would be forever.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what it kind of grew out of. And also, this was something for me to put my attention on. I wanted to do something creative during the shutdown, and I wanted
Yeah.
it to be something that would live on beyond the shutdown. So, for example, I remember when I was writing that line, we got shut down. And I was like, we got shut down for a year. Well, no, it's not going to be quite a year. And so I just said, God knows how long.
Mm-hmm.
So that way it was it's open ended,
Yeah.
and it was, you could talk about it in the present tense. You could also talk about it in the past tense. Hopefully we'll be able to sing it in the past tense
Yeah.
more and more.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But I wanted it to be something that I wrote it in many ways to comfort myself, but also to comfort other people. And I've described it as like a get well soon card
Yeah.
to the city.
Oh my gosh. And Dan, so let me tell you, I believe New York Forever is
Hmm.
a very symbolic song to the city,
Oh, I'm
and
glad
it's
you feel that way.
definitely the anthem to New
Right
York
on.
City. So
Yeah, sounds good.
amazing with that song. And
Yeah,
I love how you put all these elements into it, listening to other, perspectives and music out
sure.
there, really crafting it to the
Hmm.
times, to yourself, to New Yorkers as a whole. So thank you for adding this beautiful song into the
Thank you.
universe. Yeah.
I'll say one other thing about the
Hmm.
song, just to kind of fill out what I had in mind with it. I wanted it to have a slight sense of I wanted to have a gospel feel, just a
Hmm.
little bit. I mean, that's not the kind of artist I am per se, but I wanted it to have that sense of like people coming together in almost like a religious sense while still obviously remaining secular. So that's part of why I brought that organ in at the end. I wanted it to be that kind of like uplifting sense of almost like a religious ceremony because New York is my religion.
Oh, I love that. Oh my gosh. And I don't know if I mentioned, and I may have, but I really think this song, like I envision it with like, your lighters up and large
Yeah, there
crowds,
you go.
you
Sure.
opening up at Governor's Ball here in New York
Cool.
City and other, big openings that define New York City because that's what that song feels to me.
From your lips to whoever promotes Governor's Ball's ears.
The universe in New
Yeah,
York,
right.
yes, and Governor's Ball. So I really appreciate you sharing this insight with regards
Sure.
to New York Forever. And, you know, want to ask here, is there any question within, the song,
Hmm.
Dan Smith will teach you to play guitar or anything within your background that I may have missed that you'd like to kind of note?
Well, I do want to say that I have a lot of plans for the future,
Yes. Mm-hmm.
with more music and that I've written and I haven't recorded and released yet. But I'm always writing, and there's a lot of I definitely encourage people to check me out in terms of what I have available online.
Yep.
But there's also a lot that I have in works. I'm currently developing a television show
What?
about my life
Oh my gosh, that's
and
exciting.
my journey in New York City
Of course.
and my kind of unusual dilemmas that I have encountered being a somewhat public person
Mhm.
who's trying to also get something happening for myself musically, creatively,
Mhm.
and career wise. So I'm very excited about that project, and I'm looking forward to bringing that to the public, and hopefully finding some, a production team that can help me do that.
Absolutely. Well, we're all looking forward to that. I know I am,
Sure.
to hear more music come from you, Dan, as well as a
Yes.
potential, TV show that caters
Yes.
around just this whole amazingness experience you had in New York, right?
Yes.
And your relationship with it, and New York
Yeah.
forever. So this is giving me goosebumps. Thank you
Cool. Me too.
so much, Dan, for sharing, more about your background, your New York story, and kind of moving along into our next segment,
Yes.
which kind of falls more into giving tips for the audience on how to become an artist, musician,
Mm-hmm.
and so forth here within New York City, as successful as yourself, Dan, or just any
Yes.
any type of tips. What are some tips that have essentially helped you become an artist,
Mm-hmm.
musician here in New York City that you could share with others?
Well, I think the first thing is to be as independent as possible. The more you can look to yourself to bring something to the table, and that's just something that's true in life. You have to ask yourself, like, what do I have to offer?
Mhm.
Whether it's yourself as a player, as a player of your instrument, or a singer of your, if you're singing is your thing, your voice,
Mhm.
or if it's your abilities as a producer, or your abilities as a writer, perhaps all of these things and more. So really, you ask yourself that question: what is it that you bring to the table that is uniquely you? And if the answer is you don't know, that's okay, but keep that question in front of you. The other thing that I would say is you want to, when you're in situations where you are playing with other people, the philosophy that I always try to bring to that moment is I try to play in such a way that it makes everybody else sound good.
Mhm.
So if you do that, it's actually, I'm going to reveal this secret, it's actually a very selfish way to play. Because if you play in a way that makes other people sound good, then you sound good.
Mm.
So that's really the best thing you can develop for yourself, is to have great, music to
Yeah.
offer.
Yeah.
I mean, as a songwriter, that's the bottom line. And it sounds like such an obvious and probably in some ways annoying thing to hear, is like, write great songs. Um,
Yeah.
that's the
Simple as
best thing. Yeah.
that.
But I will say also, the other thing that I encourage certainly my students to do is to, if you see yourself as a performer, and not everybody does, some people are purely recording artists, but if you see yourself as a performer, make it your business to find opportunities to perform. Because the reality is, with performing, you really do need to get time behind the wheel, so to speak. If performing was like driving a car, you got to get comfortable, and you got to do it as regularly as you can, whether you decide you want to go to open mics, which has certainly been a great opportunity for me.
Yeah.
And, that's a great way to essentially go to the gym, and develop your craft and work out the kinks,
Mm.
and don't be afraid also to video record yourself,
Mm.
and go back and look at it and cringe as much as you need to, but then work on it and get better.
Yeah.
So those are my tips.
Oh my gosh, you gave so many great tips. And then lastly, that one where,
Mm-hmm.
really practice your craft. There's the
Yeah.
expression out there that you're supposed to put, is it 10,000 hours into your craft before you're actually really good at
Yeah.
it? So I don't know
Yeah.
if that is true, but definitely
Well,
staying.
I would say there's some truth to that. I think it's that, as well as I go back to what I said earlier. You have to do that while using your imagination.
Mm.
If you just kind of do that unmindfully and just kind of grind out 10,000 hours, you'll get somewhere,
Mhm.
but you won't really, you won't connect to what you need to connect to.
Yeah.
So you have to do it mindfully, I would say.
Love that. Love that element that you added. And I'm going to put in a plug here. And,
Okay.
and because if people do want to get better and you do come into New York City and you want to learn from a great guitarist, can you still teach them guitar
Of
here in the
course,
city?
absolutely. Of
Yes.
course,
Okay.
yeah. So that's, something that I would just add to that while I teach guitar, that's really a jumping off point for developing yourself as a singer, because to play guitar, you really kind of have to sing, whether you think of yourself as a singer or not. You have to use your voice. as a tool. But also for most, if not all my students, it's a jumping off point to learning how to write songs, how to perform, how to record. And so I do all those things, but guitar is really kind of the entryway to that.
Okay. And thank you for kind of elaborating on that. I definitely wanted to
Sure.
note that you are accessible to that extent. So,
I am.
and you
Yeah,
get to meet
totally.
amazing Dan Smith and learn more about him.
Hmm.
So, following up on another tip here, and it's one
Sure.
that you've done amazing at, and it's,
Hmm.
how can someone essentially be seen or heard here in New York City, promotional wise? I know you did promotions with the Flyers then, and
Hmm.
that
Yeah.
kind of just took its own life form, right?
Yeah, it did.
And
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
not going to happen to everyone, but is there certain areas people can go to, places they can build communities and so forth?
Well, certainly a place to build communities would be at various open mics around the city. There's hopefully going to be more of them. They've been a little in short supply since COVID, but I know, for example, Bar 9 on Ninth Avenue between 53rd and 54th Street has a great open mic. Patty Riley's, which is a great old Irish bar, I want to say on 2nd Avenue and 29th.
Hmm.
They have open mics that you can go to and develop your craft and meet people.
Hmm.
Um, but if you're out in Queens and Brooklyn, there's probably more out there. There's a group called the Astoria Music Collective, which runs a couple different open mics, and I'm pretty sure people have gotten paying gigs through that. Assuming that they have something to offer.
Hmm. Hmm.
My paying gigs have always come from ultimately probably from me putting up flyers.
Ah,
Uh,
that's awesome.
but
Do you
so
recommend people still do that, Dan? I'm
yeah, yeah,
curious.
why not? Absolutely. I'm not in any way threatened by that. Please feel free. If not to sound egotistical, but if you think you can keep up, go for it.
I
It's
love that.
it's a long haul, and it's
Hmm.
not just putting up a couple of flyers. This was a lifestyle for me,
Yeah.
and and it's something that when people ask me, because I've gotten all kinds of offers from different businesses to flyer for them, and I've also been asked to come and speak to marketing classes and business schools, which I haven't done because I'm trying not to
Uh-huh.
feed into
Promote
that.
that. Hmm.
Yeah, but sometimes people will just ask me for advice about putting up flyers, and my first question for them is, "Do you know what a war of attrition is?" And a war of attrition is where you basically just show up every day for years and wear people down
Mm.
until
Mm.
they have no choice.
Yeah.
But you penetrate their consciousness to such a point where, I've had students during COVID when I haven't been putting up flyers. Had new students come to me because they reached out to me because they said, I decided I wanted to learn to play guitar, and I just had this voice in my head saying, Dan Smith will teach you guitar.
Uh-huh. Yeah. It's
And they
brand
hadn't,
recognition.
yeah, exactly. So I would say be relentless. If you want another New York word, be relentless.
Mm. Oh my gosh, you're giving
Yeah,
so much great tips here, Dan. I can't even
sure.
keep up, and I could just keep asking questions, but
Sure, feel free. I'm happy to tell you more.
you mentioned practicing your craft,
Mm.
kind of putting time out there into your music.
Hmm.
Would you recommend beginning artists, musicians to, go out to places like the subways, parks, Times Square, the streets to kind of do their crafts?
You can. I mean, that's a tough row to hoe.
Mm.
But certainly people do it.
Hmm.
Um, it's it can be a way. I know people who make a living doing that in
Right.
the subways and out on the streets. Um, but I think with whatever you do, and this is a question that everybody, certainly myself included, has to kind of address on an ongoing basis, is like, okay, then what?
Hmm.
So I do that, and then what? And obviously there are all the fantasies of like, I will be discovered,
Hmm.
and that kind of cinematic moment of like, I will pluck you from obscurity or whatever. Don't wait around for that.
Oh. Hmm. Hmm.
That's
Yep.
that's a nice thought and everything, but ultimately God helps those who help themselves. I
Hmm.
think you have to kind of, sure, why not go out to the park and see, how it feels to, play songs for the people passing by or whatever, and that's an experience to have. Why not? Um, if you play in the subway, that's really that can be pretty rough. So you got to really be up for the gig. And the people I know who do that and actually make money, they have gotten very, very good at that. And there's a lot to be respected there. But it's long hours,
Yeah.
if you're going to really do it. So for anybody who does it, for that kind of thing, busking out on the street, I would say just keep those two words in your mind. Okay, then what?
I like that. Yep. Then what? Then what? Not just in the
Yeah.
present moment. So
Yeah.
perfectly said there, Dan. And, wrapping this last segment up, I think you kind of mentioned this throughout our conversation, but what do you think the essence of being an artist, musician, creative is, in life?
I think it means putting yourself in other people's shoes. And therefore, in order to do that, you have to be pretty connected to your own emotions and your own inconvenient emotions, I would say. So, because I think that's where the gold is buried, in all the inconvenient emotions.
Yeah.
So to ask yourself those kinds of questions of like, what's it like for the other person to hear this song? What would it be like for me if I heard this song, or if I heard somebody get up on stage and do that comedy bit or whatever? That's my best answer right now. I mean, I don't know if I could narrow it down to one thing, but if I had to, I would say put yourself in the other person's shoes.
Thank you so much. Oh my gosh. So from sharing your New York story to your amazing background on how you got started here in New York City,
Yes.
to your song that is an anthem to NYC, New York Forever. I have truly appreciated our conversation, your insight, your craft as a musician and artist, and really just speaking with you, Dan, and excited to
Sure.
share this. So thank you so, so much.
Well, thank you. And I really appreciate your enthusiasm for the song and my music. And it's been a real pleasure speaking with you.
Of course, and same to you. But before I let you go here, Dan, I
Yes.
do have this segment that I like to play with everyone. It's called a New York Minute. I'll kind of just speed round a couple questions about the city here, and you just say the first thing that comes to mind. Are you okay to play that?
I am so ready.
Here we go then. 3, 2, 1. Favorite New York borough?
Oh, Manhattan.
Favorite New York neighborhood?
Chelsea.
Favorite New York food?
Culture Espresso makes the best cranberry oatmeal cookies in the universe. So that.
Okay.
Culture Espresso in Midtown.
Favorite season in New York City?
Spring, all 3 days of it.
Favorite New York tourist destination?
The Circle Line.
Ooh, never heard of that.
Yeah, the Circle Line, that's a boat that goes all around the city.
Okay, good to know. Definitely have to try that. Favorite non-tourist destination?
There's a stretch of the loop in Central Park between where you enter at Central Park West and 77th and to the 72nd Street entrance that I ride my bike along, and it is just extremely peaceful and just trees and just very flowing, and it's probably never changed. It probably never will change. That's my favorite place.
I love that. That sounds beautiful. I think I know where you're talking about. Okay, favorite holiday in the city?
July 4th.
Ooh, why? I'm curious.
Well, maybe it's just because I miss people being out on the street together, all watching the fireworks together. And, when was the last time we could all, crowd in with each other and have that kind of collective intimacy and look up at the sky and see something beautiful?
Yes. Well, hoping this July 4th is spectacular in New York City.
Yes.
Favorite New York subway line?
The Q.
Favorite NYC park?
I'm going to say Riverside Park.
Favorite weekend getaway from New York?
I like to go to an island where there are no lines and it's very quiet on the weekends and there's lots of stuff to do, amazing restaurants. It's this amazing island.
What's it called?
Manhattan.
Ah, I love it. One word to describe New York.
Forever.
Oh, and then one tip on how to live your best life in New York City.
When you wake up every morning, take 4 deep breaths. And before you go to sleep at night, take 4 more deep breaths.
Thanks for tuning in to Gossipnista. Your support means the world. If you've enjoyed what you've heard, please be sure to hit the subscribe button and share this podcast with your friends. Can't wait till next week's episode? Follow along on Instagram at Gossipnista to get my latest New York happenings. But if you live and breathe New York City like I do and want even more, go to our website at gossipnista.com, explore, and subscribe to our newsletter to get insider tips first. Lastly, if you have any questions and or scoop on the city, you can email me at gossipnista@gmail.com. Until next time, you know you love me. XOXO Gossipnista.